morning. Welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. It's so nice to see you here this morning. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose. Let's stand up and we'll sing together. And so it is, and so we allow ourselves to move ever deeper into the sweet surrender that Amy brought us to with her eloquence and elegance. We rest in that heart-centered place as we breathe in and breathe out, relax and let go, and listen to the words of our sacred reading.
From The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer. Surrender. What a powerful word. An amazingly powerful word. It often engenders the thought of weakness and cowardice. In my case, it required all the strength I had to be brave enough to follow the invisible into the unknown. It is not that surrender gave me clarity about where I was going. I had no idea where it would lead me. But surrender did give me clarity in one essential area. My personal preferences of like and dislike were not going to guide my life. By surrendering the hold those powerful forces had on me, I was allowing my life to be guided by a much more powerful force, life itself. I could see that the practice of surrender was actually done in two very distinct steps. First, you let go of the personal reactions of like and dislike that form inside your mind and heart. And second, with the resultant sense of clarity, you simply look to see what is being asked of you by the situation unfolding in front of you. What would you be doing if you weren't being influenced by the reactions of like and dislike? Following this deeper guidance can become the foundation of both your spiritual and your worldly life. And so it is.
And so it is. And so let us continue to breathe deeply and move into that heart-centered space, that place beyond preferences, beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, that place within us beyond like and dislike, that holy place that helps us remember the I Am presence that lives and moves and has its perfect being within each of us. Let us sing together.
Resting in the place where the sacred meets the profane, nesting in the space between the beauty and the blame. I went searching for a savior, but I could not find a name until I caught a glimpse of you. I caught a glimpse of you. Sweet surrender, sweet surrender, sweet surrender, sweet surrender. Practiced like a ninja, studied like a priest. I've been scrambling for scraps when I had been prepared a feast. And I may have missed the message of your love, to say the least, until I caught a glimpse of you. I caught a glimpse of you. Sweet surrender, won't give up the fight. And it would surely do me good to lay it down tonight, when the journey has been so long, and every step I made seems wrong, but you're coming round again, like some long lost friend. Sweet surrender, sweet surrender, sweet surrender, sweet surrender. Thank you for this sweet, sweet surrender. Such a sweet, sweet surrender. Blessed be this sweet, sweet, sweet surrender. Sweet surrender.
Oh, good morning, everybody. It's great to see you. I have one of those talks this morning where I couldn't really figure out what I wanted to say. And I went through phases of thinking, I don't really understand this. And then other phases of thinking, I'm probably the only one who doesn't understand this. They all know this. They all are experts on the subtleties of surrender. Am I wrong? Perhaps. So the book that we've been featuring this past month or so has been The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And it's a great book, and I'll just sort of recap what it's about for those of you who haven't been here recently. It's just the story of this wonderful author, Michael A. Singer, who wrote The Untethered Soul. And it's a story of his life, of how he was an economics major, determined to get his PhD in economics, and then he discovered meditation. And he just started meditating, and that became his focus. And then various things kept coming into his life, and he kept saying, oh, I have no interest in that, I'm not doing that. But then he would do what it said in the reading. He would go past his ideas of preferences, of like and dislike, and just allow life to teach him and life to bring forth within him what needed to be revealed and or healed. And many, many wonderful things happened to him through his surrender. Whenever I do a talk about surrender, or turning the other cheek, or loving your enemies, inevitably, somebody will come up to me and ask me the important question, what about Hitler? I'm going to engage in conduct unbecoming of a Science of Mind minister, and that is to beg. And I'm just going to beg you, please work your way up to Hitler if you have to, okay? We don't talk about love your enemies, surrender, turn the other cheek. You don't have to start with Hitler or people, people of his kind. Maybe start with the guy who cuts you off in traffic, or the person who brings more than 15 items in the express lane, okay? You know, Hitler's over here, those people are way over there. So work yourself up, okay? But the people who do ask me, what about Hitler, or what about, this person or that person, or what have you, there is actually a legitimate point to that, because there are some subtleties to surrender that if we think we have to say yes to everything, if we surrender, if we give in to everything, it can feel like giving up. And sometimes it's not necessarily appropriate to give up. Sometimes we have to have what we would call good boundaries. And again, this is where I think I need to learn this. Everybody else in this room is an expert in good boundaries. Okay, I feel better now about my message. Okay, good. You may have somebody in your life, or have had somebody in your life who is addicted to somebody. Do you surrender to that, or is that enabling? You may have somebody in your life who is doing something else self-destructive, or somebody who is cruel to you or unkind to you. Do you surrender to that, or is that appropriate? You may have somebody who is engaging in unjust behavior. Do you surrender to behavior that is not fair or that is unjust? What do you do? Well, we're going to explore some of that today and hopefully come up with some insight and some wisdom for us to take it to that deeper place where surrender is not quite so cut and dried, not quite so cookie cutter, and look at ourselves and see, where are we truly surrendering, or where are we doing something else? If it feels like in a situation where you feel like I really should surrender here, but if it feels like that should surrender really feels more like selling your soul, then chances are that's not about surrender. Chances are that's about something else. And I would say that that something else might be desperately seeking. One of the wonderful things that happened this summer in our center was that we had a class in Meister Eckhart. And I forgot to warn you I was going to talk about you. Sorry. Our teacher, David Kerrigan over there. You'll deal with it? Good. You're just going to have to surrender, David. Okay? All right? Sorry. So we had this great class in Meister Eckhart, and one of the things that stood out for me was just a passing commentary, nothing that we really studied in depth, but I attended the class as a student, and I mentioned that some of the work that I've been doing with one of my teachers, Nipun Mehta, has been about moving from the state of transaction to trust. We move from transaction to trust, from the consciousness of transaction to the consciousness of trust. And David, who was the teacher of that class, said that Meister Eckhart had written a sermon on that, and I'll do my best to explain it. You can ask him if it's right afterwards, because this is how I remember it. But Meister Eckhart had talked about the famous scene in the Bible where Jesus comes into the temple and turns over the money changers' tables and drives out the people that are selling animals for sacrifice. You know, many of you are probably familiar with that scene in the Bible. When it's one of the Bible great hits, great moments in the Bible. And a lot of people in my past have used that scene to justify getting angry. They said, Jesus was really angry. He was wild. He went crazy in that temple. And I had another spiritual teacher who was very clear in saying that it wasn't about anger, that it was just him speaking the language that the people that he was driving out would understand. What David shared with us in the Meister Eckhart class was that Meister Eckhart said those people, those merchants that were selling animals and that were changing money, they were good people. They were good people, just trying to do their job. But what Jesus did when he stepped aside, stepped out of the situation and made a whip so they would take him seriously, and then drove him out, that is metaphorical for the idea of driving the transaction consciousness out of our most holy consciousness. Right? We are extremely transactional beings. And sometimes our attachment to transaction keeps us out of trust, and it keeps us out of our innate holiness. Now, I didn't mean to sound dualistic there, like transaction is bad and trust is good, right? They're both part of the wholeness of God. But it is helpful to look at ourselves and see, where am I being transactional? Another way of saying that is, where in my life am I constantly trying to get something? Am I seeking to get something? In the case of boundaries, it is often about our seeking to get approval that gets in our way. That's transactional, and that may get in the way of our highest expression of truth, God, surrender, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes these concepts like transaction, trust, and where are we transactional and where are we seeking approval are best illustrated by a personal example. And so I thought I'd share with you a story of something that happened to me a while ago, a long time ago. I was living in California at the time, but back in the olden days when I lived in the San Fernando Valley. Moving back even further, I had a really, really close friend when I lived in New York. He was, in fact, the person who gave me away at my wedding, and he was my man of honor. And we were very close, and he was a very, very lovable guy. And he was also an addict in many ways, addicted to drugs and addicted to sex. He was gay, and he had AIDS. We were very close, very close. I moved to California. We continued our close relationship. And then as his illness progressed, he started getting very demanding. And so he called me one day from where he was in New York, and he called me up, and he had an idea about what my life should look like. You get it already, right? An idea of how I should change my life to support his life more, and how I should, it wasn't like, send him cards occasionally or call him more often. That I would have willingly done, but it was a career change, and it was a huge investment of time and money and energy. He wanted me to drop what I was doing and be his business partner in something. And I thought about it, and I breathed, and I didn't want to say no, but I knew that I had to say no because it wasn't authentically what I was sent here to do. I was just starting out in the school of ministry. And so I said no. And that's when, as I like to say, the bodhicitta hit the fan. The bodhicitta is perhaps loosely translated as the loving heart of the Buddha. Well, it hit the fan, okay? Let's just put it that way. Okay. He got very, very angry with me and started sending me threatening emails and calling me and saying all kinds of horrible things, and how could I be a spiritual person if I refused him, all of this stuff, on and on and on and on and on. And of course, when somebody does that to us, when somebody attacks us, when we're just being our authentic self, what does it cause us to do? I didn't hear anything of that, but doubt. Okay, I heard Margaret say doubt. Yeah, it causes us to doubt the decision that we've made. So I had many of those long nights, staying awake, tossing and turning, wondering, did I do the right thing? Was it okay to say no to him? Was his demand out of question? Could I have compromised? Could I have said it in a nicer way? And then there's, of course, the guilt by the fact that he has AIDS. I was like Hester, with the scarlet A, like wearing a sign that said, person who is mean to people with AIDS. That was not the reputation I wanted to have for myself. But the truth is, I wasn't mean. I was just being my authentic self, and his reaction was his business. In the middle of one of those sleepless nights, for some reason, I suppose God spoke to me. I got this inner calling to get up and read, this is going to be weird for you, but read King Lear. Okay. But if you are familiar with King Lear, that will make sense. If you're not, I'm going to explain it. One of the things with this guy who was upset with me was one of his threats was that he was going to cut me out of his will. And I didn't even know that he had money or not, but I just knew that he must be really, really hurt if he was making threats like that to me, because he, in the past, loved me. He gave me away at my wedding. He stood in as my father and as my best friend, as my man of honor, my man of honor. And when that cut me out of the will business made me think of King Lear, which is a story about a king who has 3 daughters, and he decides at one point that he's going to ask his daughters in front of everybody how much they love him, and that's going to determine how much of their dowry they get. He's going to split up his kingdom 3 ways, he thinks. And so the first 2 daughters say in front of everybody, the first one says, "Oh, I love you so much, you're the best father ever," and you can tell she's just full of it, full of bodhicitta, and she's just pumping him up and getting his ego going, and he's like, "Wow, this is great, this daughter loves me, you get your 1/3 of the dowry." The second daughter does the same thing, but up a notch. He's like, "Wow, this daughter really, really loves me too. You're getting your part of the dowry." And then his 3rd daughter, Cordelia comes up and stands in front of everybody and says, I love you, but I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I'm not going to flatter your ego or succumb to your manipulation, to your need. I'm just going to tell you that my actions all along have said that I love you. And it's just true, and I don't really need to do anything more to prove it. What do you think King Lear's reaction was? He was not a happy camper, right, Amy? He threw her out. He sent her to France. She married the King of France. And she didn't get any of her dowry. But one of the things that he said to her, and this is why I'm telling this story, is he said to her, "Well, if you're going to be the way you are, if you're not going to flatter me, then you're not getting your dowry. In fact, truth shall be your dowry." He says that like that's a bad thing. When in fact, truth is the most powerful thing that we have. That's what surrender is to me. Surrender is going within and aligning with the greater truth of any situation. It's not ensuring that I make this person happy over here, or that I make this person like me over here, or that I enable this person over here. It is going within, as the reading said, looking past my preferences of like and dislike, looking past my transactional consciousness of needing approval or pushing away disapproval, and just saying, Spirit, here I am, I'm beyond all of those considerations. Now, what is it that I am called to do in this situation? What is the highest truth that I can call forth in this situation? So that's all there is to it. It's easier said than done, but life will provide us with many, many, many opportunities to practice. And I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt, I don't remember the quote exactly, but she said, the only way to avoid criticism is to do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. If we're out there living our vision, if we're out there speaking our truth, if we're out there being everything that we were called to be, then there will be people that oppose us. There will be conditions that oppose us. There will be situations that feel like they're against us. One of the most beautiful ways to know that you're on the right track, though, is when people oppose us. You know, so many times in my life, in many, many different scenarios, not only here, but in many scenarios in my life, I've had to say no. Somebody has wanted something from me. Someone has wanted to participate with me in something. The best example I know of this, you've heard this before, but it's the time the Buddhist yelled at me. The time I got chewed out by a Buddhist because she wanted to do something in the church, and I was brand new. I had been here about a month, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I didn't know how what she was doing would fit in with the church. So she called me, and we had a lovely conversation. I said I would think about it. She called me back, and I said no, and she started yelling. I was tempted to ask her how the Buddhist detachment was going for her at that moment. But my point in telling that story is certainly not to bag on Buddhists. Everybody has the yelling and the getting upset and the not getting our way and the transactional consciousness is beyond religion. It's just part of the human condition, and it's part of the beauty of the human condition. My point is that when you say no to somebody and they start yelling at you, that is a really good sign that your no was the perfect thing to say, right? I have to remind myself of that all the time. If I say no and somebody gets really mad and starts trying to manipulate me, and either through anger or guilt or confusion or pressure, I can, if I'm having a good day, if I can remember, and if I can, I'll call a practitioner and ask them to remember for me. I will say, thank you so much for providing me with that evidence that my no was really a yes to sanity and grace and goodness. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. The other thing that I find helpful, because we're all, maybe it's just me again, but we're all pretty willful, right? We all want our way most of the time. And it is sometimes hard to discern whether or not we are really being called to surrender or whether we are being called to assert ourselves. And that's why we have to get familiar with the subtleties. If I am feeling really willful and really connected to my way being a certain way, to this particular outcome or to this person changing in my life, one thing that I find really helpful is instead of focusing on what am I against, I focus on what am I for. So in my situation with my friend in New York, I was certainly against changing my whole life to meet his agenda for me, but I was for our shared well-being. In another situation I had with somebody who was struggling with addiction and tying me up in lots of different knots over various things, I spent a lot of time ranting and raving, saying, I am against addiction. And instead, it's so much more helpful and so much more peace-producing to say, I am for your well-being, for your peace of mind, for your possibility, for your greatest growth, for your greatest happiness. I don't necessarily get to decide what that is or how it looks like, but my willingness to let go of my againstness and move into my forness provides an avenue for that to take place. And it's a lot easier and a lot more peaceful and a lot more fun. One more thing. that I find helpful. And that really is to do whatever it is we need to do to cultivate compassion for the person who seems to be against us. You know, when Nipun was here, he talked about activism versus giftivism. And activism has this subtle implication of against, I'm against this, I'm against that, I'm going to protest that because I'm against it. Giftivism is moving into the consciousness where everybody wins, where everybody has a place at the table and everybody's voice is valid. And somewhere, somehow, be out the ideas of mine and yours, of wrongdoing and right doing. There is Rumi's field where when the soul lies down in that grass, the world, I see you crying over there, the world is too full to talk about. So if you can't figure out what you're for, be for that. Be for the awakening of that place within everyone. Not only us, but that person who seems against us, that person who's giving us a hard time, the person that is trying to manipulate us. Be awake. Be awake to the possibility of the world being too full to talk about. The world being so magical and so mystical that everybody wins. You're here this morning by divine appointment. Perhaps you're here because you're struggling with somebody in your life. What will it take to apply these principles? Not to change them, but to change your heart. Whatever it is, I hope that you say yes, because this is what helps all of us. And the good news is that you are part of this incredible mystical community that will support you on your journey. If you're having a struggle with someone, and you're wondering, am I supposed to surrender? Am I supposed to give in to them? Am I supposed to overlook it? Or am I supposed to stand up for myself, assert myself? What are the subtleties of surrender here? Call somebody in the church. Call a practitioner. We have friends here to support us, and that is a beautiful thing. In the spirit of that support, I want to paraphrase the reading that Hugh did that addresses some of the subtleties of surrender. I'll close with this. Surrender. What an amazing, powerful word. It often engenders the thought of weakness and cowardice. In our case, it requires all the strength we have to be brave enough to follow the invisible into the unknown. I love that. It's not that surrender gives us clarity about where we're going. We have no idea where surrender will lead us. But surrender does give us clarity in one essential area. Our personal preferences of seeking approval and avoiding disapproval are not going to guide our lives. By surrendering the hold that these powerful forces have on us, we allow our lives to be guided by a much more powerful force, life itself. The practice of surrender is actually done in two very distinct steps. First, we let go of the transactional reactions of seeking approval and avoiding disapproval that form inside our minds and hearts. And second, with the resultant sense of clarity, we simply look to see what is being asked of us by the situation unfolding in front of us. What would you do if you weren't being influenced by the transactional reactions of seeking approval and avoiding disapproval? Following this deeper guidance can become the foundation of both your spiritual and worldly life. And you know what? Shakespeare wrote these words in 1605, but it's still true. If we allow ourselves to move past that place and check in with truth, then truth shall be our dowry. Truth shall be our inheritance. Truth shall be our divine claim on life. And the truth cannot operate in a lie, but the truth can operate in the truth. And the truth is the truth of wholeness, the truth of well-being, the truth of you showing up exactly as you are, your authentic self, sent here on the planet Earth, sent here in beautiful Ventura County, sent here in this very room to shine your light and be the greatness that you are called to be. Let's know that for ourselves and each other right now. Let us pray. And so together we go into that deep place, that place that never leaves us, that place that contains right and wrong and good and evil and darkness and light, that place that is the power and the presence of the living God, the wholeness that we call love, that love beyond love. We move into that place and call it our own because it is exactly who we are. And in this place, we take a kind, objective, compassionate look at our lives and see if there is anything, any place where we can let go. What am I willing to let go of right here and right now? What is causing unnecessary struggle? What am I resisting? And if you can, just breathe in deeply and then exhale and just leave it here at the church. Leave it on that altar, that beautiful sacrificial altar made by a Mayan architect for the Baptists. I don't know why it's here, but we better put it to good use. Just leave whatever you don't want on that altar and know that it dissipates into the native nothingness from where it came, because it truly is nothing. And now in the void that is created, let us call forth the greatness, the power, the presence of life itself, that life that is so perfect, that has been with us since before time, that has been the void, and that 13.8 billion years ago decided to create this incredible thing that we call life here. We breathe into the magnitude of that, and we hold that up as a mirror to look at both the largeness and the smallness of all that is. And so I take anything that feels like it's uncomfortable, feels like it's pressured, feels like it's resistant, and just let it go again. And I hold gently, or am held gently in that beautiful space, that beautiful consciousness that is that field beyond wrongdoing, beyond right doing, beyond ideas, beyond everything. That field of wholeness that is the truth of who I am. And just think what can happen, what you can know, who you can be, what you can do as we surrender to that life and allow it to live its life through us. Think of it moving through your life. Think of it moving through the life of the world, healing and blessing and transforming and transcending, embracing everything, loving everything, moving us into a greater state of compassion and well-being than we have ever known. I hold this truth for the entire world and trust it and know it, that God is here, God is in charge, and all I need to do is just show up and surrender and say yes. So I'm grateful, so grateful for this truth, so grateful for this teaching, grateful for this beautiful spiritual center, grateful for all of the healing that I know has occurred on seen and unseen levels today through our spiritual work together. We are creating something magnificent here. And I'm so privileged and so honored to be here in service of that, as we all are in service of whatever this is. And so I bless this center. I bless all paths to God, churches, temples, mosques, ashrams, synagogues. I bless fundamentalists and atheists. I bless everyone, for everyone is a blessing. And with a heart that is so filled with blessedness, I say, thank you, Spirit, thank you, God, and I release these words into the mystery, and together we say, and so it is.
Will this day I be a blessing? Will this year be better than the last? Will I calm the voice that hounds me? Discard the demons of the past? Will I step out in my faith now and live the truth I've come to know? Throw these dreams into the river and And let these 4 words help them flow, singing, yes, God, I believe. Yes, God, I believe. Yes, God, I believe. Sing it with me now. Yes, God, I believe. Yes, God, I believe. Yes, God, I believe. Maybe it's a body that needs healing, a relationship that's worn, or a child that is in trouble. And here's a friendship that's been torn. There's a job that needs new vision, a bank account that needs belief. I don't gotta tell you all my problems, I just gotta rest in your relief, singing, yes, God, I believe. Yes, God, I believe. Yes, God, I believe. Sing it with me now. Yes, God, I believe. Yes, God, I believe. Yes, God, I believe. I believe in your goodness. I believe in your grace. I believe that your power is flowing through me in this space. For you've given me guidance, and you gave me desire, and you would not have set this flame in my heart if I could not start a fire. So yes, I believe, Lord, I believe. Yes, I believe. God, I believe. Sing it with me now. Yes, God, I believe. Yes, God, I believe. Yes, God, I believe. Sing it with me now. Yes, God, I believe. Yes, God, I believe. Yes, God.